Welcome back to our Succession podcast, which does not have a name, which is why I'm stuck doing this intro.
We should have come up with a name.
We should have come up with a name, but it's far too late now.
It's too late.
Suck Pod. No, don't call it that.
No.
No, that's a bad name. Anyway, this week we're talking about the third episode of season 4, Connor's wedding. And I don't know, did you guys see that?
Has everyone seen it yet? I hope you haven't been on social media if you haven't seen it.
I don't want to come out of the gate too strong, but was that the best Succession episode ever?
I can't process that. I need to fully process the episode, then I can process it in the context of all the other episodes, and then I can answer your question, okay?
Good point, because it has now totally recontextualized the end of season 3 for me, and
yeah.
I mean, it was huge, so yeah, I think we're just going to start with our general takeaways and reactions to, spoiler alert, Logan's death. Crazy. And one of the things I've seen people say in reaction to this episode is that there was an extended period of time where they were kind of doubting that he was actually dead, that it might have been a trick or that he would make some kind of miraculous recovery. And I think that probably was purposeful on the part of the episode, the way that it was written and shot. There wasn't an objective death scene. It was shown very subjectively. We didn't really get eyes on Logan's body until pretty late into the episode. So I think that was purposeful. But did you kind of experience that, Savannah, where you weren't sure if he was really dead or what was going on?
Well, I have to back up a minute. So I was following the filming news for season 4 throughout filming. And I did see, along with I think a lot of people, that they were filming for a funeral at one point during season 4. And people were, of course, paying very close attention to which actors showed up for this funeral. One of them being Brian Cox. So everyone was like, oh, it's not Logan. Maybe it's Sandy with a Y. Because Sandy with an I was there.
Yeah, and you told me about that because I wasn't really following the filming news, and you said that there was a funeral, and I was like, do they know which character? And I said, is it a major character? And you said no, and then I said, okay, tell me, and you said Sandy. So I sort of knew that as well. But yeah, and then obviously this week in various interviews, Brian Cox has been bragging about the way that he showed up to set that day, and how there were photos of him arriving on set that nobody thought that it was Logan's funeral, because why would he be there? So
well, because they're Catholic. Open casket funeral. I should have realized.
So true.
That being said, when I was actually watching the episode and they first got the call, my first instinct was that Logan was playing a trick on them because Roman had just left that voicemail. And they're like, oh, Logan is very, very sick.
Wow.
Like, that sounds like classic Logan, that, you know, the kids try to fuck with him and he's like, oh, he's sick. Like when he canceled on Chip's wedding. That's what it kind of reminded me of. Then once it became clear there was something actually happening, I was like, oh, Logan is dead. Regardless of the filming photos, there's no way in the 4th season of the show they would go this far, if not to kill him.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that would have been pretty lame if he had like another health scare.
Yeah, it wouldn't have done anything.
My experience was pretty different. I didn't have any doubt at all, really, from the first time that Tom said your dad is sick. I was immediately thinking that, well, this is it. But there's a few reasons why that was my experience. I think by the time that this episode premiered, I was more certain than ever that Logan would die sometime around the midpoint of the season, and there's a couple of reasons for that. One was someone on Tumblr just pointed out that of all the stuff in the trailer with Logan, we had seen almost all of it in the first 2 episodes. There weren't a lot of Logan scenes in the trailer that we hadn't seen yet, and I was like, oh shit. I saw that post and I was immediately like, well, fuck.
The real spoilers are just fans on Tumblr paying attention. Don't pay attention to filming photos. Pay attention to the fans. And
Roycast, which is a good podcast, but
yes,
one of our competitors, so I can't be too...
They're on Spotify, so
they're fine.
I feel like kind of, you know, they can be the best one on Spotify.
In the Roycast episode about episode 2, one of the things they brought up was just the fact that the karaoke scene seemed like the last time the family might be all in a room together. And as soon as I heard them say that, it just seemed so immediately true to me that I was also like, well, fuck. But I didn't think he would die in this episode going into it. I was not expecting it. What I would have expected, actually, is that Roman would get a little bit further into ATN, kind of have a fallout with his siblings, and then Logan would die in like another episode or two. And then I'm kind of glad it didn't go down that way. I was glad that the siblings were still in a good place with each other for this. I think it would have been really crushing if Roman had been kind of like estranged from them at that point.
Yeah, that would have been so hard.
So yeah, this was kind of better in that way. I didn't really have any doubt that he would die just in general anymore, whereas I did a little bit at the beginning of the season, and I think we'll talk a little bit about that towards the end of just the sort of back and forth about, did they always know this was going to be the final season or not? Now it seems like they're saying, oh, we knew all along it would be the final season, which Jesse Armstrong is gaslighting us. Can I just say that?
Gaslit by Jesse Armstrong.
The full Succession experience of being gaslit by your showrunner daddy.
Dad, and we still love him even though he lied to us.
Literally, oh my god.
I thought they did a great job of upending our expectations with Roman, because they just set up so much the ATN stuff, as you mentioned. Yes. And like, oh no, he's going to be playing both sides. And then very true to life, you know, the unexpected happened.
Yeah, threw a total wrench in it, which puts all of that into perspective. Oh, I also wanted to say, so when Logan and Tom were getting onto the plane, I just had a bad feeling. I wasn't expecting him to die in this episode, but seeing them get onto that plane, I was just like, there's no way that Logan and Tom and crew are going to Sweden to meet with Mattson. I'm like, that's just not happening.
It wasn't in the trailers.
It wasn't in the trailers, man. I just couldn't see it happening because I knew that the other siblings went over to meet with him. I'm like, why would they have like two separate meetings? And then I remembered the airplane in the poster.
You remembered the airplane in the poster?
I did, when I was watching the episode.
That's amazing.
This is my thought process, and that's why I wasn't surprised. And that's why I thought immediately that he was dead when Tom called, because I remembered the airplane. I remembered, like, the 9/11 jokes that people were making. 9/11 too.
This is on me for distancing myself from, like, Tumblr and Twitter in the last year, because I didn't see those 9/11 jokes.
I remembered that plane that was really the only thing that seemed like a potential Easter egg in the poster for season 4. So my brain, right before the credits, went, fuck, plane crash. No, Tom's there. So I immediately talked myself down from the plane crash. Also, that would have been stupid if they died in a plane crash.
Yeah, of all the things, they build up his health and he just dies in a plane crash.
Right, that would have been absolutely stupid.
And the other characters survive somehow. It's just Logan.
This is Logan.
They were not protecting Logan of all the people on that plane.
They don't get him a parachute.
I love that there was a plane in the poster, because it's such a boring poster. Like, we can say it. The season 3 and season 4 posters were not great.
Suck.
I'm glad there was a little thought, more so than I had thought initially.
Right, they're just visually not interesting posters compared to the seasons 1 and 2. Anyway, so yeah, that was my experience. I didn't really have any doubt. I never thought it was a trick or anything like that, but I do think that that was probably the intention of the show, was to create that doubt. I mean, it was still surprising. I was still like standing up to watching this episode going, oh my god, I can't believe it.
I think even though I was like, yeah, he's dead, the fact that they weren't actually showing it, and there was still this doubt, and, you know, there are real situations where people think someone's dead, but, like, you know, they're just legally dead for 10 minutes maybe, and then they come back. Like,
for sure.
I could still feel the sense of uncertainty, even though I wasn't uncertain, and I thought they did a really good job of putting us in the kids' shoes in that way.
So let's kind of get into the beginning of the episode a little bit before we go to Logan's death, because I did want to talk about the Roman and Gerri stuff. I was actually kind of glad to see some follow through on the whole dick pic fiasco, because I just kind of found it hard to believe that Logan wouldn't foster some weird resentments towards Gerri because of that. And I also like that Roman has to confront Gerri being hurt because of something that he did. I think that's important for him to have some like real consequences. And the fact that Logan was the one that made him deliver that news was very cruel. And it really reminded me of like season 2 Kendall, that I think is a position that Roman hasn't really been in, because he hasn't really rebelled against his father before. But Logan, when someone acts against him and then they come back into the fold, he's always going to make them take their medicine, make them do something like totally humiliating, like a test of loyalty kind of. And Roman saw through it, but he still did it. I mean, he kind of knew afterwards what it was. but he still did it.
He did it. He did what his dad told him to. Logan loves to isolate his kids just to, really feel secure. He's a very insecure person. He needs to know he's the number one person in their lives.
Especially Gerri's probably kind of a threatening person for your son to be attached to, because she's a very capable person.
Logan doesn't respect anyone, but he definitely doesn't respect Gerri. The thought of Gerri pulling one up on him with his son and contributing to his son's fucked up whatever is going on with his sexuality, you can see very transparently why he did this.
We can't say too much more about Logan, probably, so we have to get all of our Logan takes out of the way now that he's dead.
I think he's still gonna have a presence in the rest of the show.
True. We probably just won't have as much to say about his personal motivations as far as his impact, and other people will still be very relevant. But I think it was in an interview for this season that J. Smith Cameron said that Logan will give power to someone and then kind of wake up the next day resenting them, even though he was the one that gave power to them. And I think this is so true, and was a really good read on what happens with Gerri, especially, that he named her CEO or interim CEO and then immediately was like, well, fuck Gerri.
Fuck Gerri, I never liked you.
He was happy to keep her around for 3 months and clean up all this mess and help with the merger, and then he's gonna fire her the day before selling the company. That is really such a shitty move.
Yeah, he likes to give people power because he thinks he can still keep them as his puppet. He's like, I'm giving this to you, and then they just take it because they're, just as capable of using power as he is.
The scene between Roman and Gerri it kind of starts off pretty cute, they kind of do their little flirty banter.
They do their flirty banter, but it's a little off. I like seeing that and how well Gerri knows Roman at this point. She's like, okay, you're making your really gross jokes, but your heart's clearly not in it. You're not looking at me. Something is wrong.
Right. She sees through it right away, and he tells her, even though he wasn't really planning on telling her right away, which is, of course, so sad, because if he had waited 15 more minutes, he never would have had to do this. But I love that he did this, and that she's not going to just let it go because his dad died. Just saying, well, my dad told me to, is not a good excuse.
I did want her to give him a little comfort at the end. His dad just died, but it did feel true to life and the character that was it. She'd had enough.
Yeah. And I'm curious to see the way that it plays out. It's rough, the position that Roman is in. He seems the most kind of alone right now.
The beginning of this episode actually really reminded me of the end of season 1, when we were at Chip's wedding. Kendall had this plan that his siblings weren't aware of, that they were going to be really unhappy with. They were all being very affectionate with each other, and we kind of saw that mirrored here with Roman. Kendall's being very friendly with him, not knowing what's under the surface, and I guess I should have known someone was going to die. This is very in Succession tradition.
Yeah, that's a really good comparison, because this happened at a terrible time for Roman. Just the night before, he had decided to basically betray his siblings, go back to his dad. Then he betrayed Gerri for his dad. Then he got mad at his dad and left him a voicemail, which I love that scene. Genuinely obsessed with this scene. Before anything else happened, I was like, whoa, Kieran Culkin Emmy reel. And then the rest of the episode happened, and I was like, well, shit.
Right on the money.
I thought that scene was crazy, but yeah, I did love this voicemail scene. Just saying don't listen to this in the middle of leaving a voicemail is a great move. Asking his dad, are you a cunt? Can you get back to me on that?
I was so proud of him for this. I know he's going to hate himself for it forever because of what happened immediately after, but this was a great moment for Roman.
And this was sort of the honesty that he got to have, because we'll get into it in a moment, but the other siblings were pretty honest in their last words to Logan, saying I love you, but, and I can never forgive you, but I still love you. Roman didn't say I love you, but he also just went right to lies in his last moment. You're a good dad. You did a good job. He was honest in this voicemail when he thought he still could sort of be honest because his dad is still alive and still okay. But as soon as that gets taken away from him, he kind of retreats back into lies.
Yeah, it was very childlike and understandable.
Everything about this voicemail, the fact that later on he briefly seems to think that his voicemail might have killed his dad, that his dad was listening to it in the bathroom, heard his son call him a cunt, and immediately keeled over, which is hilarious.
It's amazing the power that abuse can make you think you have. Like, you think you're so powerless, but also so powerful in terms of your parent's health.
That is so true, that Roman thinks that this voicemail could have had the power to kill his dad.
Yeah.
He is never going to be normal again.
I love how Kendall clearly doesn't know exactly what happened, but he just jumped to immediately, Rome, it's okay. Like, not know exactly, but getting the gist.
And just the uncertainty of he'll never know if his dad listened to it or not before he died. And if he did, that's the last thing he heard Roman say to him. I kind of hope it was.
All the kids are going to be stuck with a lot of uncertainty because of technology. That's really it. Yeah. And that sucks. They have no idea what the last thing their dad heard was. Mm-hmm. I hope it was the last thing Logan heard too. I think Logan would just be kind of amused.
He would totally be amused. Yeah, he would just think it's funny. I mean, like, Roman's like his little pet. I don't think he cares
the dog
that
is
much.
Angry.
And Roman's left him unhinged voicemails before. One of my favorite season 3 Roman moments is when he's leaving Kendall's birthday party and leaves a voicemail for his dad where he's like, I am the best child. You can kill the others. I love you, Dad. I really wanted to see Brian Cox, like, listening to that and reacting to it.
There can be shoulders of Brian Cox's reactions, like to Roman's voicemails, to Greg's, the rendezvous in his house.
Oh, it's so true.
One other thing that really should tip me off to the fact that Logan was going to die in this episode is he was cleaning house. Like, Jesse has mentioned multiple times, they were going to kill Logan at the beginning of the show. And it was the exact same setup where the siblings were all in conflict with Logan, and Logan had also fired people, but not officially yet. They did the exact same thing. They just decided to wait a while.
It's a parallel to the first episode where he fires Frank, but then immediately has a stroke, so it's sort of uncertain whether or not it was a real event. So yeah, and here he was firing Gerri and Sid, but then died. So yeah, go women. Logan tried to fire 2 senior women and immediately died. Feminist win. Slay. So the main sequence of this episode is this 30-minute long scene that starts shortly before Tom calls Roman and delivers that news, and then it all kind of plays out in real time from there. And in the after show and various other places, they were talking about the fact that they actually did film this as a single take, and it obviously wasn't like edited to look like a single take, but apparently a lot of what they used was from that single take. And I think they used multiple cameras either way, so they were still kind of cutting between multiple cameras.
Yes, because when you shoot on film, you can only shoot for 10 minutes at a time.
Right, so they had to do like tricky little reloads. I would love to see like a behind the scenes featurette about this. Come on, we need a DVD. We
need a box set with kind of the output that Game of Thrones got, just commentary in every episode, all the behind the scenes interviews that get a shed.
The fact that they're releasing the scripts as books is really fun, and I'm super excited, and I already pre-ordered mine.
Same. I was never expecting that. I guess our dad does love us. I loved this 30-minute sequence, and I think one of the things that really struck me is it wasn't distracting the way it often is when TV shows and movies try to do this, ooh, we shot it all in one take thing.
It was not showy in that sense. Obviously, it wasn't cut to look like it was all one take.
Yeah.
It was just something they did to see what happened and try to kind of enhance everyone's performance, which I think it did, considering they used a lot of that footage.
The action felt very continuous, even though there were cuts.
In the plane, we don't totally see what's going on, but we can tell that something is going on, and Frank plays a pretty important role throughout this episode. He's the one that suggests that the kids talk to Logan one last time, so he's being pretty, like, level-headed about the whole thing. And I really liked his role here, but I also really liked how Tom was just very gentle, very patient. It was nice to see.
Yeah, after the nastiest of the last couple of episodes, it was very nice to see, especially from Tom, this kind of kindness. He really tried to get Shiv first. You can tell that was his heart was in it, and only went to Roman because Roman's been calling him back. I thought there was interesting contrast between Tom and Frank in this episode. Tom was really not giving them the truth for a very long time and saying, well, I don't know, they kind of said that, but I don't know, they're still operating on him. And I think especially to give Shiv that last moment to talk to her dad and kind of believe, at least a little, that there was a chance he was hearing her was very important. But I was relieved when Kendall, spoke to Frank alone, and Frank said very definitively, yeah, I don't want to fuck with you here. I think he's dead. I think there is a kindness to that rather than continuing to keep their hopes up.
I loved the scene with Kendall and Frank when he called him son. They're flying the plane, son. Oh my god.
Told them to fly it good.
He's just the better dad.
Yeah.
So each of the siblings gets a chance to speak to their father one last time, and what they each say is very telling. We already talked about Roman a little bit and how he does not say I love you, but he does jump kind of right into this, hyping his dad up. You're a monster. You're going to win because you just win. You're a good man. You're a good dad. You did a good job. And that's when he kind of breaks down because,
yeah,
it's so like overwhelming. He's just saying when he thinks he's supposed to say what Logan would want to hear. And
I think Shiv and Kendall were more speaking for themselves and what they wanted their last words to Logan to be, and Rowan was thinking about what would my dad want to hear in this moment.
Kendall's last words, I love you, I can't forgive you, but it's okay. That was good. That was good because I know one thing we'd kind of been touching on both at the end of season 3 and last week was that Kendall has not ever really confronted his dad about things he's done to him, and he never will. But this was a step towards that. He got close to saying, like, even though you, and he kind of cut himself off, he can't, it's too much to even say. Yeah. So I think just saying I can't forgive you is like the perfect encapsulation of it all, and this was a great moment for him.
Yeah, he didn't use any sort of crutch to, I'm talking about someone else. He was speaking for himself. It was nice to see. Mm-hmm. And Shiv was kind of speaking along the same lines. There's no excuses for she cuts herself off, but I love you. This whole scene was very emotional, but Shiv really broke me. Just Sarah totally losing it.
Oh my god.
The fact that she said daddy.
Yeah, that was the first time I actually sobbed watching this episode, was when she said daddy. That was completely heartbreaking. We've never heard her call Logan daddy, right? She just says dad, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right.
It was this moment of kind of regressing to like childhood, and that was something that Sarah Snook said kind of informed her performance, was kind of going back to being a little girl, and that really came through. And honestly, everything with Shiv in this episode was the most like emotionally powerful for me. Later when she says, why didn't you come and get me? Another sob moment.
Yes.
For me personally, I was a mess. The second time I watched it, it was worse. I was already crying just when Kendall went to get her and said, Shivy, honey.
We haven't heard Shivy like that. It's normally kind of, mean when they're like Shivy, because
I know, she was so baby sister in this episode.
Yes, I think you could really feel the age order of the siblings in this episode in a way that you can't always. Like, they're looking to Kendall for, guidance. Kendall was kind of reassuring Roman, who is reassuring Shiv.
It is canon that Roman is older than Shiv, but it's not explicitly stated in the show. And a lot of people, including my mom, I found out this weekend, thinks that Roman is the baby. I know, I was like, Mom, how dare you?
It's just because he's short that people think that.
It's literally short phobia. Roman is the middle child. I'm very, very, it's canon, but
canon.
I'm also...
It's in the script for the pilot, and it used to say it on the HBO website.
And they've, brought it up in interviews and stuff.
Yeah, and it makes sense. Shiv doesn't remember as much of the cruises stuff. There's a lot of knowledge that, Roman and Kendall have that she doesn't have. I think you can really feel it in the show once you realize it.
And we don't usually see those kind of exact dynamics of their birth order play out in the show, which makes sense. They're all adults now. But in this episode, I thought it really came out that Shiv's the baby. She's the baby sister. Especially in the scene where she said, why didn't you come and get me? And Kendall was apologizing to her. But I really loved the way that Roman just started reassuring her. And he was saying there wasn't that much time at all, which isn't exactly true. I mean, I don't blame them. They were obviously had a million other things going on in their head. But I think it was pretty thoughtful of Roman to try and minimize that so that she didn't think that she was out there talking to wedding guests for 10 minutes and missed her last chance to talk to her dad.
Yeah, I think that was for himself too, to say there wasn't enough time. I couldn't have gotten her in time. It was all happening very fast. Honestly, I didn't even notice the first time that Roman didn't say I love you. Like when he said that, did I say I loved him? I was like, yeah, you totally did. But you can 100% tell from Kendall's reaction that Roman did not, and Kendall was just trying to make his little brother feel better.
There's also that moment when Roman gives the phone to Kendall, and Kendall says, "We love you," and looks at Roman, and it seems like he did notice that Roman didn't say that.
He definitely noticed.
Yeah, all the siblings were being pretty thoughtful and considerate. I mean, they did kind of forget to tell Connor for a while, but then the door opens and
they like, oh, we have to tell Connor.
They see and hear Connor. They're like, oh yeah, he exists.
They don't even feel bad about it. He's very secondary.
Connor's reaction was, I don't know what I would have expected, but his reaction almost immediately, he just says, he never even liked me, was such a gut punch.
He immediately accepted that his dad was dead and was just like, yeah, what a disappointment that guy was.
Maybe touch on the Connor and Willa stuff a little later, but yeah, this was a mature, almost, reaction from Connor that I wouldn't have expected. Yeah.
Like, I think this episode really showed that Connor is freer than his siblings. He is given the opportunity to, we could put the phone to Dad's ear again if you want to talk to him, but he doesn't want to do it, and he moves on.
There isn't any, real kind of conflict between the siblings in this episode, I would say. The closest we get is when Roman kind of goes into his denial stage, and this was a really painful exchange when he kind of snaps at Shiv and says, we don't know, and it's not a very nice thing to say, so just fucking stop. And I think that what made it hurt more was that Shiv doesn't even fight back. She just goes, okay. In this broken voice. And that was rough. I mean, Roman did immediately apologize, but that hurt.
It hurt a lot, and I noticed rewatching that Roman kind of regresses. Like, at one point he does start to say, yeah, Dad's dead, and he's like, no, we don't actually know that. It's not a nice thing to say, so just stop.
It was a very childish exchange between the two of them at that moment. I don't think they're gonna be on great terms for the rest of the season, that's for sure. I think they will find their way back together at the end. I am not too worried about that, but I think we're gonna see probably maybe the most conflict we've seen between the siblings in the next couple episodes here.
I don't know what HBO could have shown us that would make you think that.
Is it Kendall, strangling Roman?
That was my first thought.
That is going to be my Super Bowl.
It's going to be our Super Bowl. Excited. Me versus you.
Me versus you. Whatever Roman did, I'm defending him, and whatever Kendall did, you're defending him.
Exactly. So
then from the personal reaction to the siblings, we move pretty quickly into having to deal with the corporate side of things, because as always that's how it always is. And I really like Carolina's line here where she says, if we get a miracle, we get a miracle. God bless us all. If we don't, I just have to prepare, that's all.
Carolina's had some great lines this season. I did feel bad for the people on the plane in this episode, because they do have to do their job, and it's an awkward position that they're in, having to be the ones to tell the kids they've known their entire lives that their dad is dead, and also that we have to move on.
I was glad that Frank was there for that, because he did get to be a little more forthcoming and say, I also had a close personal relationship with your dad, and he's 12 feet behind me, and, we are just trying to deal with reality here. So it was nice to see that Frank was there to sort of try and smooth things over. And the way that Kerry just kind of stumbled out of the bathroom and was, that was nuts. That was fucking crazy, right? She spoke for us all in that moment.
She really did. I think we're all kind of around Kerry's age, and that was a totally fair reaction.
There was one short shot of Kerry in the mid-season trailer, so we know she doesn't get taken totally off the board here. Who knows what will, if anything, much will happen with her.
I really don't know. Most of my Kerry predictions were based on Logan living a little longer.
My only prediction that is not a prediction, I would say fear. My only fear is that, at the end of season 3, Logan was trying to have a baby with her.
Oh my god.
So I am oh man, I don't know if there's a way that this could be handled well, so I just kind of hope it doesn't happen. But if Kerry was pregnant with Logan,
she just decides to artificially inseminate herself now that Logan's dead.
No, if she was already pregnant, it's been months. Right? She could be a couple months along at this point.
Oh my god.
And I don't like the thought, which is why I am afraid to even speak it. She has her baby and the Roy siblings have to bond together to raise their little sibling.
That's the fan fiction ending. I don't mean that in a derisive way, to be clear. Like, that's kind of a sweet thought.
I can't see a way that I would like this to be played, so I kind of hope they just drop it and do something else with Kerry. But I do have a little bit of fear.
I think if it kind of comes up again, but in a way where we don't end up with a baby, that's...
Yeah. Kerry has an abortion. Abortion episode. Okay. Well, yeah.
Look, you kind of have to laugh when someone dies.
You have to laugh.
So
right,
you won't
Kerry?
cry.
Right, Chuckles the clown. Tom's call to Greg was interesting, and probably the first time we've really seen Tom's emotional state, but it takes him a beat to get there. He kind of goes right into his weird, aggressive, like, negging behavior with Greg before he starts to cry and he gets to bat his eyelashes a little bit and say, no, I'm not okay.
This is the most emotionally honest we've seen Tom be with Greg, I think. Like, he immediately apologizes for what he said and says that he's sad.
And what he's asking of Greg is very interesting. He asks him to delete a folder called Logistics. And he also wants Greg to put out his narrative and make sure that people know that I was with Logan when he died. So whatever Tom is cooking here, I'm not too proud of him for this. What are you talking about?
He's jumping into a protective stance very quickly. And I think being a little callous, like, especially on rewatch, I noticed the woman Greg was with was really paying attention to that phone call. And I do blame Tom for that more than Greg. He didn't make sure Greg was alone or anything. He just went straight into it.
Well, he kind of was asking Greg to leak it, too. He said, this is a lockdown, but people should know I was with him. It was sort of a subtle ask of, make sure people know. Greg is in their family. I don't think he has much emotional attachment to Logan, but he did say Uncle Logan. For Tom to call and kind of weirdly gloat about Logan's death to his nephew was strange.
Grief does strange things to us.
Well, and then Kendall kind of takes charge of the corporate response, and he begins to twist the narrative in a certain way, says we weren't estranged, we had a family function last night. Technically true.
This was such an understandable reaction. We all went to karaoke. See, you can find footage of us somewhere, there are receipts. We weren't estranged.
And he also is pretty careful about what they do and the most level-headed in the situation, saying we don't want to do anything like have the plane circle for half an hour because anything we do is going to leak and it's going to reflect on us, and we just want to be careful about how we act here. And he also seems to have his eye on the prize again. I mean, he's thinking, oh, here's my chance. Kendall!
It was nice to see this, just the quick recovery and still, thinking about his goals and wanting those things for himself.
It was nice to see that I think he had progressed the most emotionally of his siblings, except for maybe Connor, that he was able to sort of take it in stride the best.
Yeah.
But yeah, thinking that, well, instead of selling to Mattson tomorrow, let's keep our options open. I was a little like, oh no, you almost made it out. God damn it.
Logan may be dead. I mean, he definitely is dead. But they're still gonna be in his hold for a while longer.
Oh yeah.
It's not...
Absolutely.
Logan's never needs to be in the room anymore for them to be affected by him.
I wonder if we will continue to see the impacts of lifelong abuse continue to play out on the abuse show.
It is the abuse show. That's what people should say instead of, this is a show about business and corporate greed and like...
Yeah, it's the abuse show. I mean, that's really what it keeps coming back to.
That's the emotional thread of the show.
Should we talk about Connor and Willa?
Let's talk about Connor and Willa.
I know we were a little rough on them last week, well, more so Connor, and this is a relationship that has its issues, but what did you think of their conversation here?
It was not what I expected at all, especially with the way they played this conversation in the trailer, but I really liked this scene. They continue to be the most honest couple on the show. I think we can definitely say that, even if they're still not a healthy couple.
I was not expecting the conversation to go like this at all. It really reframed the whole issue here. And she was really honest in her answer when he asked, "Are you just with me for the money?" And she said, "There is something about money and safety here, but I'm happy." You know, she didn't say that she loves him. She doesn't say that she wants to be with him forever. She said, "I'm not going to walk away, not today at least." That was an adorable moment. But yeah, the fact that they actually talked it through, I think that was needed, and I don't think that would have happened if Logan hadn't died.
No, that's a good point.
So in a way, kind of a nice moment that they got to really break down those barriers and have a pretty honest conversation, and, you know, both decide that they really did want to do this and have a private wedding. This was a kind of a beautiful moment, a private wedding for a couple that the reason why they're together is really because of like public appearances. Connor wants some arm candy, a young, beautiful woman to trot around at the RNC or whatever. And, you know, Willa wants the money and status. So for them to get married, really just for them, kind of a nice moment. So I am like walking back my walk back now. Yeah, I think they might be the healthiest relationship on the show.
Which is still a low bar.
Still a low bar.
Connor wanted such a big wedding too. Like, he really wanted this to help his campaign. So the fact that they had really what Willa wanted, which was just a nice, quiet, I mean, I don't know if she necessarily wanted quiet, but she definitely wanted a nice wedding, and I think she got it, ironically. I think grief can do a lot of things to people, and they are both mature enough. We saw that in this case it made them want to be honest and just stay close to each other. I'm happy for them. I hope Willa leaves him eventually, but I think she did what would make her happy in this moment.
She was pretty honest about that too, that yeah, it's probably not going to be forever.
That was so cute.
That was a genuinely sweet moment. Maybe they're going to be all right, those crazy kids. So the last scene here, the siblings have a press conference to announce that their father has died, and there's a very, very sweet moment between Kendall and Roman right before this, where they tease each other, like, "You're not going to be okay.
You're not going
to be okay." That was adorable.
Siblings are kind of at their best, even in this horrible time. Just,
yeah,
they're all supporting each other so well.
Shiv's announcement, and I think the maybe most notable thing is she does answer one question as she walks away and says, we intend to be there for whatever happens.
I love the way they cut to the like news feed in this moment, just a reminder of what a public thing this is to say.
Yeah, and Shiv gets a moment of comfort from Tom that was sweet and heartbreaking and everything, and kind of steals herself and walks away, but does end up leaving with him at the end. So
we've seen this kind of shot with Shiv before, where she just kind of ducks her head into a guy. It's just so Shiv that she's like not directly looking at someone when she gets comfort. She just it's kind of cat-like, you know?
"Can you be a dog at the foot of my bed?" or whatever she says to Nate. Oh, Siobhan. One of my favorite lines from the episode is when they're discussing whether or not they want to go see his body, and Shiv says, "Well, he's not going to get angry if we don't," with this little smile on her face. Like, it's this moment of maybe realizing that they have a chance of freedom and that something good can come. They don't have to think about how their dad is going to react to every little thing they do now.
Yeah, I think there was a little bit of relief in that moment, and that was beautiful to see, especially so soon after he died. This really made me feel like, oh, they're going to be okay.
And then that hug, of course.
Which was improvised
by the three actors. That is beautiful.
I mean, if I was on set that day, I would have wanted to hug all them too.
They're literally siblings, you guys. I care about them. I care about them so much, but it's nice seeing that the show cares about them too, you know?
Yeah, I feel like we're on the same page, us and the writers.
Yeah, especially just after the end of season 3. I was like, good, they do care about the three core siblings and their relationship.
It's a slow burn, the relationship between the three siblings. We had to earn it.
We really had to earn it, and we're gonna have to re-earn it here, but I felt very held by this, like I was in a sandwich hug with
yeah, exactly.
And then Roman is the only one that goes onto the plane to see Logan's body, which, yeah. Well, what did you make of that?
I felt like this was a good thing for Roman to do for himself, to really... He could have continued avoiding it, but he made himself face the reality. And I thought it was interesting, too, the way Kendall didn't go on the plane, but he did hang around and watch them load the body.
Yeah, I think both of their reactions there really made sense for what they needed for some sense of closure, and that Roman probably did need to see it to believe it. Roman has always been afraid to see his dad in a state of not being well. You know, during the UTI scene, he says, "Can you call me when he's less scary?" He is afraid of his dad not being well, so for him to go see it. So they didn't actually show what was on the plane, or that scene, you know, between them was not shown. But for a moment, I was like, oh no, are we going to get an Igby goes down moment here? Did you watch that movie?
Yes, I did.
Great movie starring Kieran Culkin when he was like 20 years old.
What did we do when we were 20?
Incredible actor. We love him around here. And in that movie, not to spoil it, but he's kind of playing a Roman type. He's like a bratty rich kid. And then
bratty rich little brother.
Yes, exactly. He has an older brother who's very like Kendall coded.
Yeah.
So then his mom dies, and there's a scene where he's just kind of like taking out his rage and frustration like on her body a little bit. When I watched that, I was like, this should be Roman and Logan.
Maybe when Caroline dies.
Maybe.
It's hard to picture him being that physical with Logan.
Yeah, that's true. There was a really good Tumblr post about this, and I have to tell you, since you're so chronically offline, I have to report back the best Tumblr post. I should make like a newsletter for you.
Please do.
I guess this podcast is our newsletter, but there was a great post about how Roman is the only one that goes to see his body, and that Roman is the one that was physically abused by Roman, or by Logan. When Logan is sick in season 1, he asks Greg to bring something that smells like him, and he just wants to smell his sweater. So Logan is maybe detached from his own like physicality in a way. Like, he doesn't want to reveal his own like vulnerability. He has a line in season 2 about how he couldn't take off his shirt in front of his first wife or something like that. Like, he has this sort of discomfort with his body and physicality, and Roman has sort of inherited that. You know, he doesn't have sex as far as we know, not, or at least not often, or not in like a, you know, quote unquote normal way.
Fuck is what we know.
He doesn't fuck. Okay, that's what I'm talking around saying. He doesn't fuck. He has this sort of weirdness maybe with his own sort of, you know, physicality and like relationship to that. So there was something really kind of interesting and moving about Roman like needing to see it, and also wanting to spend that time physically with his dad. So is Logan the middle child of Ewan and Rose?
I think so.
Because Rose
that's
is
always
maybe
been my
the youngest.
interpretation.
That's my assumption. That's crazy. That makes me feel insane.
Yeah.
Ewan, Logan, Rose, Kendall, Roman. Fuck. I can't even talk about that. I'm gonna go nuts.
I can't deal with that. We're already an hour into this podcast.
Yeah, that's crazy. But I guess just those parallels between Roman and Logan, and the fact that, I don't know, I think Roman is kind of scarily positioned right now to maybe become Logan a bit. I'm worried about it. Or at least to try to.
Yeah, I don't think he could ever do the things that Logan does, but kind of... Yeah. In terms of his position within the company, he is the most positioned. And
the fact that he probably feels some guilt over, even though it's completely misplaced, over his death, just the circumstances of it. You know, if he tries to sort of become his dad as some way to honor him, I will go so crazy. I'm already not doing good, but that's fine.
You're not doing well at all. You're not sleeping.
Oh, I'm not sleeping, you guys. I told Savannah this. So we're 3 weeks in, and my sleep schedule, like, I'm not kidding, Succession is like an upper to me. I bought Benadryl this week for the express purpose of taking it after Succession on Sunday, because I cannot sleep. I probably got 4 hours of sleep. Like, I went to sleep probably around 2, and I was not even using my phone or computer after like midnight. I was literally just like laying in my bed, unable to sleep because of Succession. And then I woke up at 6 because I'm crazy, and my heart was pounding, and I had a really weird dream. I'm not going to talk about it. It was Succession related. I'll tell you later. I don't want to. Okay. I cannot say it on the air. It's insane. But yeah, so I am genuinely going to start drugging myself after Succession to see if I can sleep. So I'll let you know how that goes next week.
Yeah, please let me know first before you tell me on air.
I'm sure it'll go great. What could possibly go wrong?
turning to drugs because of Succession. It's really irresponsible of them to show these things on Sunday night. You know, it's a school night, it's a work night.
Honestly, is anyone else, like, driven to use drugs because of Succession? Let us know in the comments.
Please do.
Woo! Let's do our segments.
Yeah.
The human spirit is unsinkable, and we still must pick a candy baby for this episode.
Ugh. Hot. Ugh.
So my candy baby, and I think the candy baby of the episode, was Willa. She was so beautiful in that scene with Connor talking about whether or not they want to go through with this. And I just loved her dignity in that scene when it would have been very easy to reassure him, but she did something good for herself, which was to be completely honest. And I think she was honest. I think while the money is a factor, even more so than that, she's very emotionally beholden to him at this point and doesn't want him to be alone.
Great choice. We didn't get to see a lot of her dress, but it did look gorgeous.
I also wanted to shout out one other candy baby from this episode.
Sure.
Which was, our viewers don't know this, listeners, but Jenny dressed up for the wedding for this episode.
I'm the candy baby?
You're one of the candy babies.
Okay, wait, now I feel like I have to put my dumb selfie in here so people can see it. Okay, this is so lame. But I'm lame, so Connor's wedding, I went into it expecting wedding and hijinks on a boat, so I was like, wouldn't it be fun to get dressed up? So I put on a dress that I have worn to actual weddings, so it's like the nicest dress that I own. I did my makeup, and then I sat down to watch 60 minutes of the most emotionally fraught television I've ever seen in my life, but I was wearing a dress, and then the worst part is that, like, then you have to take off the dress afterwards, like... It just felt very ceremonial and weird, and I was like, why did I do any of that?
Why do you do these things? Ruined your makeup crying over these kids.
Yeah, literally. I was crying. I was sitting on my couch in the nicest dress I owned, wearing makeup, crying. By myself.
That's the right way to watch Succession. That's what everyone should have been doing.
It was like the full experience, because everyone else was expecting a wedding and also got, like, hit by an emotional train. So there you go. I got the full experience.
You did.
Oh, that's very funny. I didn't think you were going to bring that up.
I wasn't sure if you would want to include your selfie in the, podcast, which is why I decided to also give you Willa in case you didn't want to use that.
Well, it was really funny, too, because I was kind of planning on doing it. I had mentioned to my mom, like, I was at, like, Easter brunch that morning with my parents, and I was like, yeah, I might get dressed up to watch Succession later, as a joke, but not a joke.
That's
and then
how
my
you
mom
always
texted
say things.
me.
You're like, I might do this.
Yeah, I might. Wouldn't it be goofy if I did that?
That'd be funny. Dare me to do this thing that I'm already doing.
I can't believe you're making me do this. And then my mom texted me like half an hour saying, did you pick out your outfit yet? So then I was like, well, shit, I have to send my mom a selfie. So that's why I did it. It was for my mom, okay?
Oh, yeah, it was for your mom. You had to dress up for the wedding of Connor and Willa on the TV show Succession for your mom.
For my mom. And then after my parents watched it, we had like a conference call because they were both like really shaken by the episode, and my mom was like, Dad wants to call. So I was like, all right. And then my dad was just like, so does Logan have a vote on the board? And I was like, yeah, I think he has double voting power because he's chair and CEO, I think. I don't know. He just died.
He just died.
My candy baby was Gerri.
Gerri. Oh
Yeah.
my god, this is the last thing I expected you to say.
Look, I'm trying to shake my reputation as a Gerri hater. No, I like Gerri. She's fine. I really liked her outfit here. I loved her hat, and I had never noticed that she has like multiple piercings on one ear. Pretty hot.
That's hot.
I don't know if she's always had that, but I was like, hey, look at you, Gerri.
You got some edge.
Gerri. So yeah, loved that, and just seeing the sort of emotional vulnerability from her, always something I like, but I also liked, she doesn't swear a whole lot, so when she said I danced us through a fucking thunderstorm without us getting wet, all right, queen, go off.
This was a good Gerri episode. It's always nice to see her complexity.
Yeah, and I'm excited to see more of that. Let's do best line.
Words are just, nothing. Complicated airflow.
So we already touched on many of the major lines of this episode. So I would say my big three would be like, I love you, I cannot forgive you, Connor blurting out he never even liked me, and Shiv saying he's not going to get mad at us if we don't. So I didn't pick any of those. I picked a line that made me laugh sort of hysterically the first time because it just came at a point when there was so much tension and was just so funny. So this is when Kendall says, we'll get a funeral off the rack. We could do Reagan's with tweaks. I was gone.
It's such a Kendall line.
Just sent me. Absolutely sent me.
That's a great pick. I love it.
Thank you. What was your line of the episode?
Well, you're calling me out here because I picked I can't forgive you, but it's okay and I love you.
Yeah.
We already touched on it a little, but I have more to say.
Yeah, please say more.
There's a lot to be said about love on this show, and, you know, people love each other but don't respect each other, and people who hurt each other very badly but can't walk away from each other, and this feels like, along with, you know, the other things the kids say to their dad, one of the very definitive Succession lines. I loved getting this from Kendall specifically, he has trouble finding middle ground with his dad, as Shiv points out, and this showed so much growth that he could recognize my dad is not a good person, but I love him and I want him to have a good send-off. I hope he's hearing this.
Right, and the fact that it wasn't, I love you, but you're kind of evil, like we saw last season. It was just about their personal relationship.
It was very mature and self-aware, which is amazing for Kendall.
That really was the line of the episode, so I'm glad you chose that. Let's do number one boy.
You're my boy. You're my number one boy.
I kind of cheated. You will remember you did this in the season 3 finale, which is you refused to pick one number one boy and instead picked Kendall, Roman, and Shiv, and that's what I'm going to do here. Because I can't possibly pick between one of them in this episode when their dad just died. I just felt equally horrible for all of them, and also equally proud of how well they fared given the circumstances. They stuck by each other, and it was beautiful to see.
I was kind of in a similar boat where I was trying to choose between the three of them. And rather than doing that, I actually picked Connor as my number one boy. I couldn't even try and choose between the three Roy siblings, so I'm glad that you chose them.
I chose them for both of us.
Connor, seeing this real maturity, and I think he got some self-actualization from his father dying, which was a great wedding gift. Thanks, Logan. I was actually proud of him, which I don't often feel that way about Connor. And I think his line of saying he never even liked me, I just liked that line more than what he said last week about, I don't even need love. Because obviously that's not true. He wants it, I think he was just trying to guilt trip his siblings a little bit with that one, and it was not totally self-aware, whereas I think this line, it hit and it just seemed true, and I was glad that he kind of got to that point where he was able to just take a step back, have an actual honest conversation with Willa, and get married anyway. Good for him.
Good for him. He's not always very clear-headed about his dad, and that was great to see.
To wrap things up, maybe just a brief chat about we've sort of been sprinkling this in throughout about where we think things might be going from here, but I also just wanted to talk about this kind of confusion about whether or not this was the final season and kind of expand on Jesse Armstrong gaslighting us to explain what I meant from that, because I don't know if we were just reading everything wrong before, but I felt like they were always saying before this episode, oh, we weren't really sure, and nobody knew until the last table read, and all this stuff. And it was well, that never totally made sense to me, because don't you decide that when you break the season as a whole? And that was the one thing that made me think, well, maybe Logan isn't going to die, because that would feel like an endgame thing. And they're not going to have a whole nother season after Logan dies. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean. They had such emotional reactions that they talked about in finding out finally that the season was ending. And Kieran honestly sounded frustrated to me in what he said about being strung along. And that, I'm still convinced that whatever Jesse says, he was thinking it's probably the final season, but he wasn't making the official call until the finale. And he's also said that he, has considered doing some other things in the universe of Succession. I don't know. I feel like I could see a scenario where they had some sort of other material for a 5th season, but I think they were probably more sure than they initially let on, for sure.
The way that they were talking about it on the official podcast this week seemed to be, well, when we were breaking the season in the writer's room, we thought, all right, this is going to be the last one, so Logan's going to die. That was the thought process, and that makes sense.
They told that story before. Jesse said that at the beginning of the season, I think this might be it, but let's see where it goes.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense that it was a possibility that they might go on, but also seemed, yeah, I guess. I was just felt like this, what's going on here? But unless it was all just like a psyop so that we wouldn't think Logan would die. Because everyone was super surprised by that. And that was great. Like, whoever at HBO is in charge of killing people so they don't leak things, great job.
HBO is not always great about preventing leaks. I'm so glad that for this one, it was protected.
That's about it on the gaslighting front. I'll stop accusing Jesse Armstrong of abusing me, but
It's okay, we're reenacting the Roy kids, discussing to what extent Logan is gaslighting them at any given time.
exactly. Yeah, the mid-season trailer, obviously now a lot of things that we've seen in previous trailers hit different now. Like
Yeah.
Tom saying, "I'm sorry you never got his approval to
Yes.
ship." Tom, after he's dead? Are you kidding? Sorry, Tom, but it's on site. Like, I love you, my St. Paul boy, but do not dare say that to Shiv.
Tom was maybe my favorite last season. Like, obviously
Yeah.
I'm a Kendall stan first and foremost, but Tom was the character who surprised me the most, and really his arc got me the most, I guess I would say, of all the characters. I fucking hate him this season.
Same. I'm holding out because I know he has that depth within him, and he hasn't gotten a ton of material yet. I'm sure we'll get a lot more now. We'll see.
Any of these characters, when they have power, is not a good look. Like, when they're sad, that's when you love them.
I mean, this show kind of is about the, like, corrupting influence of power, so...
Yeah.
Themes, yay!
Themes. I'm so excited that he died so early in the season.
Same.
Like, as you mentioned earlier, you thought he would die a little later, and I also thought that would be how it happened. But I'm excited to just explore a post-Logan world.
It's hard to predict, but yeah, we're gonna see a lot of our guest stars more, a lot more of Alexander Skarsgård, and Justin Kirk is back in the action as Mencken. So yeah, just a lot of like recontextualizing things we've already seen, and then the mid-season trailer had some new content as well, but still it feels like we're flying blind a little bit, which I like. I'm excited.
Yes, I'm glad that you left us so blind for the season. It's been a great experience so far. I'm excited to see what happens. Logan's name carries so much power. Like, we've seen that even as he's been so weak, to be frank, throughout the series. Like, last season, Adrian Brody, he only wanted to talk to Logan about the shareholder vote. He didn't want to talk to Kendall because people trust
Kendall's
Logan.
annoying.
What?
I said because Kendall's annoying.
Yes, he's very annoying. And I love him.
I know, I love him too. There's no trepidation for me about like, oh, how is the show gonna carry on without Brian Cox? Like, everyone is on their A game.
Yeah.
And like, this episode was 95% without him too. And so I have no worry about just the quality of the season. I think it's gonna be super good. Each episode so far has just gotten crazier and crazier. So maybe we'll mellow out in the middle. Maybe I won't have to turn to drugs as much, but then I'm sure we'll ramp back up.
We can track via our podcast your descent into drugs.
My descent into drug abuse because of Succession.
Over-the-counter Benadryl.
It's not even name brand. I got the generic.
I mean, you're not a Roy. You gotta...
Yeah, it was like half this expensive. Woo, okay, well, I think that's it for this week. We'll have to discuss next week when we record. We'll talk to you then. I can probably do Monday, but they're having a work happy hour to honor me and my exit from my job on Monday. So I could record Monday night drunk after the happy hour.
Can you?
Yes, I can. Yes, I can. We should probably stop recording too.
Did we say goodbye?
Did we say goodbye? We just
didn't say
started
goodbye.
planning. Bye!
Feel free to cry in our comments.
Yeah.
Save space.
I was very heartened how so many people told us who their baby girls were in the comments. I was like,
Yeah.
shit, you guys actually listened all the way through? That's crazy.
It was so sweet to see. Tell us all your feelings.
Did you have a burn this week?
No, but I
Or
want to
no?
hear yours.
Oh, mine wasn't very good, but
I just want to know what it was.
mine was gonna be when Shiv said, "Don't touch me" to Greg.
You know, when I was trying to find a burn, that was like the one line that stood out to me.
Right, it's
It
a
was
pretty
just
direct
putting him in
one.
his place like that and in front of so many people was hot.
Yeah, it was very hot.
Yeah.